My name is Joshua Furman. I'm the curator of the Houston Jewish History Archive at Rice University. Today is January 14th, 2021, and I'm joined today by Shirley Wolff Toomim and her daughter, Ellen Toomim Robinson. How are you both doing?
Great.
No, thank you.
Great. It's an honor to be with you both. Shirley, can you begin by telling us when and where you were born?
I was born here in Houston, Texas, and have lived here all my life.
Mm-hmm. And what year were you born, Shirley?
In 1928.
Okay.
That
And
makes,
tell us about your parents. I think their names were Boris and Fanny. Tell us about your parents.
well, my father was Boris. He was born in Russia. We know very little about him. We know that he left Russia. He escaped from there. As a Jew, he would have been very badly treated there. And he came to America with no money, not knowing English, uh, just all alone. So we have no relatives of his
Mhm.
at all, and we know very little about him because he never talked about it.
Mhm.
Fanny was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and moved with her family to Houston. And we don't know why they chose Houston, but that's where she lived and where they met.
Mhm. Mhm. We don't know why, but I think we're glad that they did. Um, Tell us about how Boris became involved with Star Furniture and a little bit about what the company was like in those early years.
Well, we just know that there were three people who had bonded together to sell furniture, um, but they had no storefront at all. They just sold by going to door, and it was not the product that they were selling. It was the fact that they could uh, collect $1 down and $1 a week. It was more of a finance situation. Um, Dad bought into that group 1/4 of the ownership of it, and we don't know how he met them, but he bought in, and he had sort of an entrepreneurial uh, strain in his DNA, and he became the head of a group. But
Mm.
Star Furniture was uh, was not really a furniture store at all in the beginning.
Right. I've heard it was more of like a horse and buggy operation, and
Yeah, they did have a horse and buggy.
yeah, hard to imagine such humble roots. Do you have memories of Star Furniture as a young child growing up? Tell us about where the first location was and the very first Star Furniture store and what it was like.
Well, it was a building downtown in downtown Houston on Rusk and Milam. That's sort of a furniture, it was at that time a furniture location. There were a number of furniture stores there. This was a 3-story building, and the the first story, the ground level, was was the store, and I do remember that it had a lot of very ugly, may I say, furniture, um, and the second floor was rented out, and I don't know. There were rumors that I've heard that it was a house of ill repute.
Yes, that's what your brother always said. Questionable repute.
right.
Oh my.
It's a good story either way.
Yeah. We hope it's not true, or we hope it's true.
Right.
Yeah. Did you work at the stores as a child growing up, or were you not involved with the business until much later?
Well, no, I didn't work there, but I do remember going in as a child, just being there and seeing it.
Mhm.
Uh, My brother Melvin did kind of work. We have a picture of him in a Cub Scout uniform selling uh, victory bonds.
Yeah. Mhm.
Wow. Very nice. We'll come back to the growth of Star Furniture and your association with it in a little while, but I want to talk more, Shirley, about your childhood. Tell us what neighborhoods in Houston you grew up in.
Well, I grew up on Stratford Street, which I don't know if it exists today or not, but it was in the Montrose area
Mhm.
in a little red brick bungalow, uh, very modest neighborhood, but a very nice one. It had nice neighbors, not at all a Jewish neighborhood. Um, then when I was 10, my family moved to McGregor, which was more of a Jewish neighborhood
Mhm. Where in the McGregor neighborhood did you live?
on Rio Vista,
Mhm.
right off of McGregor. It was it was really a lovely neighborhood with, to me, big houses. I was 10 when they moved. And next door were people that we knew. The Alexander family, the Weingarten family was not far away.
Mhm.
And so we knew a lot of the people that were close by.
Right. I'm sure many more Jewish families and Jewish kids to play with. And which schools did you attend?
Well, for elementary, I attended Montrose Elementary School. That was the one in the Montrose area.
Mhm.
And then Johnston Junior High when we moved, and San Jacinto High School, which had a very large Jewish enrollment.
I've heard that there were so many Jewish students at San Jacinto that they called it San Jacinto. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. What are some of your memories of San Jacinto High School? Were you active in any of the clubs or after school activities?
Yes, it was a very happy time for me. There were so many Jewish kids, and we all were good friends. Um, I was in a number of the clubs. I don't remember specifically, but I had very good teachers who made lasting impressions, and still have friends. Well, not many are left, but had friends through my lifetime from San Jacinto.
Sure, of course. And now your family has also had a very long association with Congregation Beth Israel. And you've told me, Shirley, in previous conversations that your class, your group was Rabbi Hyman Judah Schachtel's first confirmation class. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. He had just come to Houston.
Hmm.
He,
What can you tell us about your memories of Rabbi Schachtel?
well, he was from England, had an English accent, and was a very elegant gentleman.
Hmm.
Um, he didn't think of much of our class. We were in the mission class, and he told us we were the most undisciplined group of kids he had ever come in contact with, which I would imagine was true.
Wow.
I can't imagine that, Mom, with you. I imagine you being very disciplined.
No, very undisciplined.
Oh my goodness.
We were,
Rabbi Shachtel was also quite the orator. I've had the opportunity from the archive to listen to a number of his speeches, and
yeah,
he's quite a voice.
Mhm.
beautiful voice, and was very involved in the interfaith movement in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Was
Mm-hmm.
loved to be in the center of things.
Right. And I know you remember when he gave the benediction at President Johnson's inauguration. What a moment that was for the community. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I don't remember much, but I just remember that he had been involved and knew uh, the president, and so was called on to give the invocation,
Mm-hmm.
and did it beautifully. And we were all very, very proud.
Of course. And it
That's
was a
about
story. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
that's about all I remember about that. But we were so proud of him.
Yeah. And you've told me before that you were instrumental in creating the gift shop at Beth Israel. Is that right?
Yes, Barbara Schachtel, his wife, and I decided that there should be a, a gift shop. Um, there had not been one of in any form, and I don't think that many existed. I don't know why we decided it should there should be one. So we were given a tiny little office space that had once belonged to Mrs. Brillig, the head of the Sunday school. And in that little room, we set up a showcase, and we decided I would be the buyer and Barbara would be the bookkeeper and the scheduling of people who could act as salespeople. And we made a great team. And really, it was very hard to find merchandise. I
Mm.
don't know where I find it. It was not readily available. There were no catalogs or things that I could purchase from. But somehow I managed to find mezuzahs and different small things that
Mm-hmm.
were wonderful. And we were very successful.
I'm sure you were. I'm sure you were. And it was at a time, when you couldn't just go on Amazon and buy any kind of Judaica items that you might like. So I'm sure it provided a great service to the Houston Jewish community. And it's also kind of a forerunner of future things to come for you with Star Furniture, right? Being a buyer and putting your eye for taste and for design to work. Why don't we talk a little bit about that now? Tell us about how you became interested in the world of interior design and your path of study in that world.
Well, that had always been my goal, to be an interior designer. Um, I don't know why. It had nothing to do with Star Furniture. It was just what I wanted to do and what I registered for as a major. I started out at the University of Wisconsin, and no reason for that except that I wanted to go far from Houston. And there was a quota in big colleges, in fact, in all schools in those days, a Jewish quota. So it was hard to get accepted. I first tried for Northwestern in Chicago, and 'cause my folks had friends in Chicago, felt like I would be chaperoned there, but I couldn't get in there. But I did get into the University of Wisconsin
Mm-hmm.
and had a very good year there. I, I loved it. That was in 1945.
Wow,
Well,
1945. Do you remember winter that year? Was that your first real winter that you'd ever experienced?
my first experience where
With winter, with snow and cold weather.
it was, that was one of the reasons I wanted to be far away from Houston. I wanted to experience snow and just see what living in a cold climate was like, and being away from Houston and anything like Houston.
You know, it's interesting. I'm a few generations younger than you, Shirley, but I had the same impulse when I was 17, and I did go to Northwestern.
Really,
Uh, yes, I did, and it was very cold, and I got all the snow I wanted and then some. Um,
such a thing as quotas in your day.
not by the early 2000s when I was there, but it's a history that Northwestern and a lot of other schools are facing, you know, and are reckoning with, certainly. So you stayed at the University of Wisconsin for a year and then came back to Texas, is that right?
That's right. It was the end of the war, and I had been living in a beautiful house on Lake Mendota. Uh, the house had belonged to a fraternity, and they had rented it out to women uh, during the war. So they were returning and they wanted their house back. So I had no place to live in Madison. And so that's why I decided to move back to Texas,
Mm-hmm.
go to the University of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
had a lot of friends at UT, and it was just an easy move to make.
mm-hmm. While you were at UT, were you active in any of the sororities?
Yes, when I got back to in Madison, I did not belong to a sorority, did not go to Rush, did not have any interest in a sorority. But in Austin, it was very important. So I did join AE5 in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived there in a Jewish residence house. Um, there were just houses that were rented out to all Jewish girls. It was an interesting experience. It had many lifetime friendships that were made there. Eventually, I moved to the AE5 house and lived with friends there.
Mm-hmm. And you were continuing your studies in interior design in Austin, or were you taking other kinds of classes?
Well, I took other kinds of classes because interior design was offered in each of the schools. So I always had some classes in design, but it was always in the home economics department. It was not really considered a career choice. At least it didn't seem to be. Um, so after a couple of years at Texas, in which I did have design courses, I came back to Houston and went to Feather and Feather School of Design, which was a school that's now extinct, but it produced many of the best known designers in Houston and in Texas. It was got that name from its two owners, Mr. and Mrs. Feather. And it was a 3-year course um, that was totally focused on interior design as a career. It was a very good school.
So this is a really important point, Shirley, because it sounds like what you're saying is that at the college level, courses for interior design were aimed at women as homemakers, right? That you'd design a nice house for your husband to come home to at the end of a workday. Uh,
Exactly.
but that wasn't your ambition.
No, no, not at all. In fact, when my husband, then my husband to be, asked me to marry him, I said, no, I have 2 more years of school. I couldn't possibly be married. And he said, what does that have to do with it? So it was David's idea that I could go to school and be married at the same time.
Right.
Kind of a new thought. Nobody did that in that period of time.
At that time, yeah. Why don't we talk more about your husband David? Tell us how you met and some of your first impressions of David.
We met at Westwood Country Club, and just because I was dating somebody else um, who was a golfer, and I would walk around the course or or drive the cart, the golf cart, and so I was there a lot of times. And David would play golf with him. He was an outstanding golfer, and sometimes when I was in the clubhouse, he would just stop by and chat. So I was not impressed one way or the other. He didn't make a particular impression on me. And I just knew him. I did get the idea that he was pretty smart because when when I was in the clubhouse studying, um, sometimes he would stop by and he seemed to be familiar with there's a lot of history involved in the study of interior design. And he seemed to know dates and whatever I was studying, he sounded familiar. So, so I had no particular impression except that he was pretty smart, which turned out to be very true.
Very good. And when were you and David married?
In 1949,
Mm-hmm.
I was still in school. Uh, and that worked out fine. Uh, I was definitely very sure that I was going to complete school. I had 6 years, counting the 3 years at Feather and Feather. I had 6 years of study, and that Feather and Feather combined with my secular education at the universities uh, allowed me to have a Bachelor of Arts degree with a major in interior architecture and design.
Great. I want to talk about the development of your career in a second, but I want to just maybe we could come back to your wedding. What do you remember about your wedding? Where was it? Who
It
was the officiant?
my my folks' home, and
Mhm.
it was very small. It was just the immediate family, and then we had a big reception when we returned from our honeymoon.
Mhm.
Uh, and that was at my folks' home too on Rio Vista.
Very nice. Very nice. And so from what you've told us, David from the very beginning was open and committed to allowing you to pursue your career as an interior designer. So tell us
Yeah.
about that career. How did it begin? What was your first job?
Well, he always encouraged it. And he came home one day and said, I got you a job. You're going to furnish the Veterans House of Houston. Veterans Society had just bought a house. And I said, I still have 2 more years of school. I'm not prepared to do a big job like that. And he said, oh, don't worry about that. They're not planning to pay you. So I did. I did furnish that house, and it was great for my confidence in my ability. And that was my first job.
Wow. Unpaid, but just like they say, you got to start somewhere, right?
Right.
Yeah, got to start somewhere. So tell us about your relationship with your brother Melvyn and the point at which you began to become more actively involved at Star.
Well, Melvin and I had a very unusual and wonderful relationship. Um, Melvin had been at the University of Texas, probably with a legal goal in mind, um, when my father had a heart attack. And Melvin left Austin and moved back to Houston, enrolled in the University of Houston, and began to go in to learn a little about the business. So he was more prepared when Dad died. I really had nothing to do with Star and no idea that I ever would, because it was a furniture store, but had very little focus on design, none at all.
Mm-hmm. So how and when did that begin to change?
When when my father passed away, um, he still had 3 partners, and the Wolff family bought out the 3 partners. Dad and the one remaining partner passed away during the same month period, and we had to negotiate with the children of the other family, the Getz family, and we ended up taking the business. They had 6 small stores, I think, at that time, and we took the stores and they took the properties.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Eventually, we bought the locations from them, and we were the sole owners. One of them remained with us and worked for us for some years.
Mm-hmm.
But Melvin and I had a relationship that really worked. Um, he asked me if I wanted to help lay out the store that was the main store. And yes, I said I'd be happy to. So along the way, I started working on plans for it. And along the way, he said, well, since you spend a lot of time here, why don't you put a desk for you someplace? And I said, well, that's a good idea. So I had a little desk in a tiny little office that had no windows, but it was just a place to keep papers and keep my plans. And I kept that for a long time. I wasn't on the payroll. I didn't want to be on the payroll.
More unpaid work for you.
Yes, exactly. I didn't want any obligation to come in to maintain certain hours. And I just wanted to be able to come and go as I pleased. And that worked.
But you really enjoyed what you were doing, I imagine, right?
Loved it.
Yeah.
And eventually I realized, and I went to Melvyn and said, I said I didn't want to be on the payroll, but I'm spending all of my time here. And I think it's time for me to be on this payroll. So he agreed. And I don't know what year that was, but I did go on the payroll of Star Furniture.
Mm-hmm. What was did you have a title when you first started
Really did.
checks?
There was a law that said you had to be a graduate interior designer to use that term. So I was entitled to use the term, and I imagine that's what I put on my card, Shirley Toomim, interior designer. But Melvyn and I made a pact that if I were to come to work full time, that I would be in charge of anything that had to do with design. I would make the final decision, and he would be in charge of everything else, the financial and locations and all of that. And it worked very well. He just said, I reserve one thing, the right to criticize. And I said, all right, but I'll make the final decision. That was our agreement. And that lasted all of our lives.
Wow. Can you give us some insight into some of your most central and cherished principles of design? As somebody who has trained in this field and worked in this field and been recognized as a leader, when you think about the principles of good design, what comes to mind?
Oh, there's so many. It took me 6 years to get my degree in it. But the laws of design really don't change. And they date back to really Grecian design, the very fundamentals of design.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good.
That's when Ellen came into the business after she graduated.
Okay. Well, maybe Ellen wants to talk about her role at Star Furniture a bit now. This is a good opening for you, Ellen.
That was a good lead in. Well, so I started at college at UT, and I was going to be a therapist, and, and then decided I didn't really want to hear everybody's problems every day. So I decided to do more of like a general business, and I didn't think I would join the family business. Not for any particular reason, but I just didn't know that I would go that way. And but anyway, so once I graduated, Stephen and I, my husband, and I lived in Austin for a while. And so I thought, well, I need to get a job. And so I went to a furniture store in Austin and kind of talked my way into this job. They hired me the first day. And in fact, I remember calling my mom saying, uh-oh, I got the job. I have no idea what I'm doing. I think they think I know what I'm doing, but we'll see. So I started working there and I loved it. I had so much fun. I loved furniture. I kind of got the bug, and I actually was pretty good at it and became one of the top salespeople, and worked there for a little while, then went to another furniture store that had a little bit higher quality furniture. And so then when we moved to Houston, I went to my Uncle Melvin and said, I really want to join the company. I love furniture and I want to be part of it. So I set up a date to interview with him. And I remember it was kind of funny because I was sitting in the main lobby and people walking by going, what are you doing? It was like, I want to get this job on my own. So I interviewed with him and he said, what do you want to do? Do you want to go into buying or what part of the business? And I said, I love selling. I really want to stay in that part of it and let's just see where it leads. So I started selling on the floor. And then after, I guess, like a little over a year, he came to me and said, you know what, I think we can improve our business by training our salespeople. He said, we just sent out some mystery shoppers and they came back saying, wow, nobody knew what they were doing, including at Star Furniture. So our salespeople and the salespeople at the other stores that he went to. So he said, okay, I want you to develop a training class or training program. And I was like, okay, I don't know what I was doing. So he gave me an office and
You
said,
had no prior experience, Ellen, in that field of training.
no,
When
not
she
at all.
when she was in Austin and worked for two different furniture stores, she had not an iota of training. They just put her on the floor and said, sell.
Right. And
No,
they didn't.
no feather and feather school of
No,
Right.
equivalent. But Ellen, you had wanted to be a therapist, so you clearly like talking to people and helping people, and you're a people person, so that couldn't hurt.
Right. Yeah, and it was great. They didn't know I was associated with Star Furniture, so I felt pretty good about I was doing this on my own. So anyway, I started trying to develop a program, and I asked my uncle, can I start going through all the departments at Star Furniture and look at how do sales relate with the other departments? And so that's how I developed it. And it went from a 1 week class to, by the end of it, it was a 3-week class, and the buyers were involved. Fortunately, my mother was very involved, and that always was everybody's favorite class when she would come in, because they could see and feel the passion that she had when she would do her design classes. And we had a great session of she would just walk the floor and talk to them and point out different designs, because through the training program, there were little daily tests, and I made them learn and recognize different designs. So walking the floor was really fun. And so it was great. I mean, I really feel that did make a difference of people going through the class. And I think, the fact that Star Furniture had educated salespeople. So I was very proud about that. And it's not just what I did, it's what all of the people that came in and led, the new associates. So it was great. I had a great time. I loved my job.
Yeah. And it sounds like it was a really integral part of the culture at Star as well, the training program. And I remember you've told me previously that I think Melvyn would come on the first day to greet new associates. Is that right?
I
Uh,
lost the sound.
yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. I think that I had heard that Melvyn would come on the first day to greet new associates as part of the program. Is that right?
Yes, we had an orientation and all new associates would come. And the very first thing is Melvyn would stand up and say, welcome to our family, and talk about some principles that really started with my grandfather. Things like, that we are a family, and that we never laid anybody off, even through the Depression, and that, we're going to get through this all working together. And so that was another really important part of Star Furniture, is the feeling that we were family and our culture. I was very proud of our culture, and it really impressed people, you know, down from the warehouse people, no matter what you did, to sit there and watch the owners of the company come in and tell them you are important to us, and you know, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and welcome you into our company. And so it was a great way to start. And that was the first day of training. And then after that, then the salespeople would continue with me for 3 weeks.
Right.
And we still run into people who say they were trained by Ellen, and no matter what their career is, that they learned so much selling, relating to people.
Thanks, Mom.
That's so nice. So tell me now about the decision to sell Star Furniture to Warren Buffett. How and when did that come about?
Well, and do you know the year, Ellen?
I don't. I should. Um, Gosh, 94 maybe? I don't know. I should know. But, you know, I know that Warren Buffett bought the furniture, the big furniture store in his town, and started to see how profitable it was. It was a family owned store. And he said to them, wow, this is great. Who else in the industry is like you? And our name came up. So I think that's one of the first times that Warren Buffett heard our name. So that always made me very proud.
Yeah. Wow. That's quite the
Yeah.
recommendation.
We realized that we had no plan for succession. There was nobody that was going to take over Star Furniture. And so we talked to Solomon Brothers, the investment company, and asked if they could find somebody who might be interested in selling us. But we didn't want to retire. I mean, in buying us, but we weren't ready to retire. So we wanted just an investor. Um, and they came back after a little while and said, you have too many restrictions on who you would sell to. Couldn't fire your people, they couldn't change things. Um, he said, there's no way we can find somebody to buy you. And Melvyn said, well, what about Warren Buffett? Um, Knowing that they knew him. And he said, the man at Solomon Brothers said, well, you're too small for him to have any interest. But I am going to a wedding this weekend, and he'll be there. If I got to get a chance, I'll mention you. And that happened. And when Warren Buffett heard our name, he had heard it before, and he said, yes, I'd be interested in talking to them. So arrangements were made for Melvyn to meet with him in a hotel room in New York, which Melvyn did. And they made a deal in 2 hours. Melvyn, 2 hours and 20 minutes. Buffett is that sort of a person. He has such integrity. He's a wonderful human being.
Yeah, and it ended with a handshake between the two men.
Mm-hmm.
Things are a little different now.
A little bit. Yeah, a little different now. That's
Mhm.
quite the story.
Yeah.
So, you know, neither of you are involved with Star Furniture anymore, but I'm just curious to hear, you know, when you look back on you know, decades of running the company, growing the company, what are you proudest of?
Well, I know what I'm proudest of. It's the culture that we had there.
Mhm.
It was a family business. When I left, there were about 800 employees, and yet they were all part of the Star family,
Mhm.
and they all felt that way. And I'm very proud that today, when I see people, and they'll come up to me and say, I worked for you 20 years ago. I learned so much there. It was part of that culture. And Ellen was a great part of establishing that culture. She was called, Ellen, what were you called? The Queen of Culture. So
Yes. Yeah. Well, it gave me a chance to bond with everybody through training, and I would echo what Mom is saying, is that it really did feel like a family. You know, my mom and Melvyn and our top executives didn't sit in their offices. Everybody would walk around and shake people's hands in the warehouse. And, if somebody in the warehouse lost a family member, we would all show up at their funeral. And it wasn't because we had to, it was because this was a family. Um, and on top of that, I was also very proud of what my mom and Melvyn made Star Furniture into, because it did start out as neighborhood stores, and then we were what we call big box stores. And our biggest line that we were known for is different by design. And so people could come in, and our big thing in training was sell with respect. And again, going back to orientation, my uncle would stand up and say, there's three things that we want always to happen at Star Furniture. But one of the things I was really proud of is he would say, we will never lie to our customers. No, if you're going to, even if it makes you lose a sale, we do not lie to our customers. And so they knew from that day that, we won't lie to them. Don't lie to what we used to call them guests instead of customers. And, but the furniture was beautiful and it was put together well. And so you could come in and buy affordable furniture because Star Furniture had so much buying power. And then how Mom laid out the floors, it was easy for people to see what it would look like in their home. So we were set up more by styles, not lining up sofas and have just sofas in one area and dining. It was more in style. So people could get into an area of the store and feel comfortable. And our salespeople would say, well, tell me about your room. How do you live? And so it was more personal than just running around the floor trying to close sales. And so it was a beautiful product. And I think they felt close to the people that were helping them pick out things for their home. So, and all that started from the top, from
Right.
my mom and Melvin. I feel very strongly about that. I was very proud to work there. And I was so lucky to work with my mom and Melvin. And every day I would go in and sit down, and Mom and I would just talk for a while. And so, I miss that because that was really special for me as a daughter. So,
and our mantra was different by design.
mhm,
That really was what it was built around.
right. And it
Sound,
was. Mhm.
yeah, it sounds like that summarizes, the ethos of the company, from the furniture that you sold to the way that you treated your employees. And you had stores beyond Houston, is that right?
Yes, in Austin, San Antonio, and Bryan College Station.
Mhm.
That was our first out of town store, was Brian.
Oh, interesting. Oh,
Uh-huh.
wow.
Yes.
All right. Well, we're moving toward the end of the interview, and it's January of 2021, and our lives have just been thrown totally out of whack these last many months by the pandemic. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about how you've been managing, these last several months as we've lived through lockdowns and social distancing. So how have you managed, Shirley, to stay active and to stay connected with family and friends? What have you been up to?
Well, since I'm in the most vulnerable age group, I have been very isolated. I, I've not left my apartment very, very seldom.
Mhm.
Um, but through the computer and the telephone and the technology that we have today, it's been a wonderful help to stay interactive with people, with close friends. And I've stayed busy, and that hasn't been terrible.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. Are you still active at Beth Israel, but obviously not visiting Beth Israel much these days?
No, but I am on the board of Beth Israel, and on the board, several boards,
Mm-hmm.
Symphony, and several others, the Jewish Family Service Endowment Fund. And because of technology, we have meetings that I attend. Um, so that keeps me busy too.
That's good. I know it's we all miss being together in groups, but I guess maybe there is something to be said for getting to go to board meetings without leaving your home.
Yes.
Cuts down on a lot of traffic and other inconveniences. Ellen, how about you?
Well, I think one of the first big events that was very different is because my mother has hosted Passover in our family forever, and we did it by Zoom. So
Mm.
that was pretty interesting. Um, like she said, the technology has really helped. My husband being in computers um, gave me the idea of putting my mom on a remote desktop so I can get on her computer and get her on Zoom meetings and things like that. And don't tell anyone, but I have picked her up and she's had dinner with us, but don't tell anyone. But we're all very careful. Um, but in the beginning of all this, I it might have been Rosh Hashanah, whatever. I remember Rabbi Lyon, David Lyon, said in his sermon, um, this is really going to be a tough time. Who knows when it will end, but don't forget to look for the silver linings. And that really stuck with me because actually this year my daughter was scheduled to get married and then decided in May, we don't know when this will end. So they postponed it for a year. And on the date she was to be married, we did it in our backyard. And it was so beautiful. And my mom was front and center. And it was a silver lining. I think that what I think all of us has learned. It's like slow down, and we're getting to spend some quiet times. I mean, I take a lot more walks. I go on my bike a lot, and I live in a great neighborhood that I can walk among neighborhoods and trees, and it's instead of complaining, it's like pay attention and watch out for all the silver linings because there has been many of them. So
Yeah, I think that's a really great perspective. Um, well, hopefully it won't be too much longer before we're all vaccinated.
right.
We can get back a little bit more to life as we knew it, normal life. But I've really enjoyed the opportunity to chat with you today and to learn about your family history and the history of Star Furniture. And it's such a wonderful story and a rich legacy. And thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Joshua, for what you're doing. It makes a big difference. I appreciate you.
It's been a great experience.
Mhm.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've learned some things about my mom I had no idea. Those are some good stories. So thank you for doing this.
That's great. I'm so glad. It's my pleasure, really. Thanks so much.
All right.